On July 6, 2005, a decision was made in Singapore that would be worth at least $15 billion to the City of London. So what was that decision? Well, on that date, the International Olympic Committee decided that London was going to be the city that would host the 2012 Summer Olympic Games. So why is that significant? It's significant because London didn't have a prayer of winning those games. They didn't have a shot. They were up against New York, Moscow, Madrid, and Paris, and it was Paris's to lose. Why? Because Paris and these other cities all had the right infrastructure. They had the right stadiums. They had transportation. London had none of that. A lot of people thought London was invited to the bid as a courtesy. So, what did they do to win the games? Well, I think it's most important to figure out what they didn't do. For example, the other four cities looked in the mirror at themselves, they went back to the drawing board and created 50 to 75 slide PowerPoint presentations announcing to the world how wonderful they are. London didn't do that because they couldn't do that. Instead, what they decided to do was take a look at their audience. They discovered that the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, was comprised of 107 individuals from all over the globe. They were mostly men. They were almost all former Olympians, average age 65 years old. 20 of those individuals were over the age of 80. So if you think about it, this was going to be their last Olympics, a lot of these folks. So it was important for London to figure out what was important to them. What they decided to do was interview each of those individuals, which they did one-on-one. They asked them questions like, what are your expectations for these games? If the games were perfect, what would that look like? What do you want to leave as a legacy in these games? Those kind of questions they asked them to consider. And an interesting theme surfaced as they went through these interviews. Almost to a person, these individuals were concerned that the youth of the world were no longer interested in the Olympics. For example, when I was a child back in the 60s, I couldn't wait to get home to get my Sports Illustrated and read about Peggy Fleming and Bob Beamon and Jim Ryan. And these kids today, they say, really don't have that interest because they're distracted with so many other things in their lives due to technology and screens and just clutter. They just don't have the same interest in the Olympics that a lot of us did back in the old days. So as a result of that, they let the London team know emphatically that if there's any way to capture the youth again, capture their imagination and bring them back to the Olympics, that would be worth a lot. So to make a long story short, the London team decided they would do just that. They would capture the imagination of the youth of the world, bring them back to the 2012 Olympic Games, and that would be the legacy that these folks would lead. It wouldn't be 17 days of Olympic Games, it would be a legacy to bring the youth back involved in the Olympics. And by the way, in the year 2005, they had 7 years to put together the infrastructure, the transportation needs, to up their airports, to build the stadiums they needed. So they had that time frame where they could actually create the foundation they needed for these games. And they sold them on that fact as well. So again, back in July 6, 2005, they were awarded the games. And on July 27, 2012, you may remember that 7 children from all over the UK lit the Olympic cauldron. It was the first time ever in the history of the Olympics that the people that lit the flame were not famous. There were 7 anonymous kids from the UK. The lesson here is engage in conversations. Don't simply create presentations. Be the voice, not the echo.